I had some teachers who ran the gamut of personalities. From hippie types to old school disciplinarians to older folks just counting a days to retirement. You know who you are. But I never had a Satanist, although the jury's still out on my art teacher, Miss Taylor. This next story can be a bit disturbing if you have school-age children that you entrust to educators to make them the best version of themselves. But be warned, because you never know who's sitting at the front of the room in the big desk, because what they do in their spare time can be extremely strange. On June 9th, 2012, 35-year-old Danielle Harkins, a literacy teacher at the Lealman Asian Family Neighborhood Center in St. Petersburg, Florida, joined a host of teenagers in building a small fire near the St. Petersburg Pier. But this was not a pleasant beachside campfire or a field trip. It was the opening act of a satanic ritual designed to cleanse demonic forces which she claimed had infected the group. But the circumstances that led to this moment and the resulting questions surrounding why this all happened are equally disturbing. Harkins and her husband, George, had recently been divorced. The couple had 2 children, a 4-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son. In January of 2012, she had filed a sexual violence injunction against George, and later in August, a domestic violence injunction. Both cases were dismissed, and a bitter court battle ensued for full custody of their children. Around April, Danielle began talking about things like Satanism and demonic possession, which was out of character for her as she had never been into religion, but based on her willingness to bring such things into a conversation, people began to wonder if she might be dabbling in satanic rituals. According to neighbor Lisa Cope, a month before the divorce came final on June 1st, Danielle had begun to act strangely while talking of her newfound interest in extreme religious beliefs. Previously, Danielle had often confided in Lisa and used her as a sounding board for the ongoing troubles in her marriage. She would tell friends and coworkers that her exploration into alternate religions was merely to help her cope with her personal issues and help her to essentially discover who she was as a person. When Danielle came to Lisa's door one day, she would cryptically tell her not to be concerned and that Lisa was fine because she didn't have any demons attached to her. Lisa thought this unsolicited announcement was beyond odd, but assumed it was likely just a byproduct of the stress Danielle was under. In the days before June 9th, Danielle had suddenly disappeared over a period of days. Lisa would bring in her mail for her, and in time, growing concerned about her absence, phoned George Harkins, who assured her the couple's children were fine, and this somewhat allayed her fears. Prior to all of this, Danielle seemed to be living a normal life in her position as a teacher with a young family. Carolyn Chance, the administrator at the school where Harkins had worked for 4 years, described her as a very good teacher, adding she was very intelligent and very skilled. During her estrangement from her husband, Danielle became very close with 7 of her former students, all of Asian descent, and a type of kinship was formed, likely beyond the boundaries of a typical teacher-student relationship. The details of what would transpire prior to that night in June remain unclear, and little is known as to why the meeting at the pier was arranged. But it's been speculated that Harkins had been effectively grooming these teenagers, 6 boys and 1 girl, by taking a personal interest in them while also ingratiating herself to them by evoking sympathy for her, along with an acceptance of her growingly bizarre secular viewpoints. Once they arrived at the pier, It's unclear if they had any prior notion to what was planned for them. Harkins said nothing to them at first, only tending to the fire, but eventually gathered them around it, and according to police, at some point the group engaged in chanting and dancing around the flames. Harkins then announced to all present there were demons existing in their bodies and had to be removed with the help of the others. Harkins told a 17-year-old boy that he was playing host to an evil tick and instructed another to cut into the back of his neck using a broken bottle, which the student was reluctant to do. Danielle then took matters into her own hands by cutting the boy herself while the victim remained firmly in place, allowing her to do so. After the incision was made, Harkins then cauterized the wound with a heated house key, so, as she told them, the demon could not re-enter his body. Then an attempt to expel the evil spirits out of the body of another youth by branding him at first failed when Harkins' lighter kept blowing out. She rectified this by pouring perfume on his hand and then lighting it, which ignited an intense flame that resulted in second-degree burns to the victim. When the ritual finally ended and the group dispersed, none of the students reported what had taken place to either their parents or to authorities. This suggests that they were either fully aware and accepting of what transpired, or that their unwavering loyalty to their teacher was so profound they couldn't bring themselves to turn her in. It was only when one of the students texted a friend to tell them about the ritual, who then informed his parents, who would report it to the police, that any knowledge of the incident came to light. Had that not happened, one can only imagine the further horrific abuse that might have taken place. Bizarrely, the students participating in the ceremony remained silent when interviewed by police. Despite the physical harm inflicted, it seemed they remained devoted to their former teacher and refused to discuss any of her or their previous activity or conversations. Even after Harkins' arrest for 1 count each aggravated battery and child abuse, none of the students informed their parents or commented on why they did it and what they did. Harkins naturally was immediately terminated at the school, and her former boss, Chase, said of the incident, "Just recently she started exploring religion, but I didn't know anything about demons or anything like that." When the press caught wind of the episode, the students remained tight-lipped about everything and have to the present day. As for Harkins, she refused to tell police what form of religion would require such bizarre measures to be taken or why, and served a mere 6 months in jail. The light sentence was partially due to only 2 of the 7 teenagers agreeing to testify in court as to what took place. Upon her release, no one is really sure about where she went or her current whereabouts. The only one to make a statement to the press was 17-year-old Stephen Chatalima, who said, "I'm fine. All I know is she's in custody." So you have to wonder what religion Harkins was into that espoused the idea that humans played host to demons that had to be removed by any means necessary. We know that cutting can be a symptom of an inability to deal with emotions, trauma, or abuse, but in some religious texts, it's also pointed to as a means of removing spiritual oppression. Fortunately, Harkins' abuse and deviant conduct with these young people came to an end before any further harm could come to them. And while the unwillingness of the students to come forward against her is at the very least troubling, let's hope that wherever she now resides, parents of impressionable kids have her squarely on their radar. School's out, and teachers, leave those kids alone.